the money!" my son screamed, his face twisted with rage. When I shook my head, he slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes crash to the floor. The next moment, he lunged for the kitchen drawer and pulled out a knife. My heart froze. He raised the blade, his eyes wild, and came at me. Chairs toppled, glass shattered, and I stumbled backward, desperate to escape. How did the boy I once rocked to sleep become the man who wanted to harm me? And what happened next is something I never thought I'd survive. If you want to know what happens next, stay with me until the end of the video. And if you still believe deep in your heart that God is always watching over you, silently arranging everything, then right now, leave a comment saying Amen below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write those words, a blessing may quietly enter your life. My name is Linda Harris, and I am 69 years old. I live in Cedarville, a small town tucked away in the rolling hills of Kentucky. It is the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where the church bells still ring on Sunday mornings, and where the same families have lived for generations. I have lived here most of my life, and for the most part, Cedarville has been kind to me. The streets are lined with maple trees that turn golden in the fall. The air smells of wood smoke when the evenings grow cold, and there is always a familiar face to greet you at the grocery store or post office. To most people, my life looks simple. I live in a modest white house on the corner of Maple Street, a house my late husband built with his own 2 hands over 40 years ago. The porch sags a little now, and the paint on the shutters is peeling, but it still feels like home to me. After my husband passed away, it was just me and my son, Ryan. He was supposed to be the comfort of my old age, the one who would sit with me on quiet evenings, the one who would carry our family name forward. For a long time, I believed that. I remember the boy he once was. Ryan had bright eyes and a laugh that could light up the whole house. As a child, he used to run barefoot through the grass in our backyard, chasing fireflies in the summer twilight. He would come running inside, his hands cupped together, and then open them slowly to show me the glowing light in his palms. "Look, Mama," he'd say with pride, as if he had captured a little piece of heaven. Those were the years when my heart felt full, when my days were busy but filled with purpose. But life has a way of changing. Somewhere along the way, Ryan drifted. He left college, saying it wasn't for him, and at first I told myself it was just a phase. He would find his way back, I thought. Every young man stumbles. But instead of standing up stronger, he began to lean on the wrong things. First, it was drinking on weekends with his friends. Then, it became something more. Soon, the bottle was no longer an occasional companion, but a daily need. I tried to help him. God knows I did. I gave him money when he asked, even when I knew where it would go. I told myself I was helping him stay afloat, but deep inside, I knew I was only feeding the habit that was pulling him under. A mother's love can be blind, and mine certainly was. Each time I handed him a $20 bill, my heart sank, but my hands still opened. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would stop him from getting angry. Cedarville is a quiet town, but people notice things. The neighbors have seen Ryan stumble home late at night, and they have heard the raised voices from inside our house. They whisper about it, though mostly behind closed doors. Only Carol Jenkins, my neighbor across the street, has dared to ask me if I am all right. She is a kind woman, a widow like me, and sometimes she brings me pies or fresh vegetables from her garden. I usually smile and tell her I am fine, but deep down, I know she can see through me. There are moments, late at night when the house is silent, when I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and wonder how things turned out this way. I think of all the prayers I whispered over Ryan's crib, all the sacrifices I made to give him a better life. I worked long hours at the sewing shop, stitching clothes for families in town so he could have shoes for school and books to read. I never imagined that one day my son would look at me not with love, but with anger, even hatred in his eyes. Still, he is my son. No matter how far he has fallen, that truth is carved into my bones. Sometimes when he is sober, there is still a glimpse of the boy I raised. He will sit with me on the porch and talk about the weather, or he will fix a loose hinge on the door. In those moments, I let myself hope. I let myself believe that maybe tomorrow will be different, that maybe the boy who once chased fireflies still lives inside the man who now stumbles in darkness. But lately, those moments have grown fewer. The anger comes quicker, the demands sharper. And I am not as strong as I once was. My body aches more than it used to, and my heart feels heavier. Some nights, I hear him pacing in his room, muttering to himself, and I feel fear creep into my chest. It is a strange and terrible thing to be afraid of your own child. Yet here I am, an old woman in a small Kentucky town, sitting at her kitchen table, holding her breath in the silence of the night, wondering what tomorrow will bring. The trouble began one Tuesday afternoon, though in truth, the roots of it had been growing for years. I had just come back from the grocery store, carrying a bag of apples and a loaf of bread. My joints ached from standing in line too long, but there was a small satisfaction in knowing I had stretched my Social Security check far enough to keep food on the table. I was setting the groceries down on the kitchen counter when I heard Ryan's footsteps on the stairs. They were heavy and impatient, the sound of a man who wanted something. "Ma," he called, his voice rough from the night before. "You got any money left?" I closed the cupboard door slowly, praying for a moment of peace before I answered. "I bought groceries, Ryan. That's what I had money for." He came into the kitchen, his hair unkempt, eyes red and tired. There was a time when his face carried the softness of youth, but now it seemed harder, worn down by the bottle. "Groceries?" he scoffed. "I need cash, not apples and bread. I just need a little, Ma. Just 20. I shook my head, my hands trembling as I arranged the apples in a bowl. "Ryan, I can't keep giving you money. You know where it goes. I've tried to help, but this has to stop." His jaw tightened. I could see the anger flicker in his eyes, that dangerous spark that always made my chest tighten. "Don't start this again," he said, stepping closer. "I just need a little. Why do you have to make it so hard?" "Because I'm your mother," I said softly. "And because I love you too much to keep feeding this." He slammed his hand on the counter, making the apples roll across the surface. The sound startled me so badly that my knees weakened. "Don't lecture me, Ma. You think you're better than me? You think your precious groceries are more important than your own son?" For a moment, the kitchen was filled with the sound of our breathing, heavy and uneven. My heart pounded in my ears. I had faced many hardships in my life, losing my husband, working long hours, surviving on little, but nothing had ever felt as heavy as facing my own child like this. When he saw I wasn't reaching for my purse, his face twisted with frustration. He stormed out of the kitchen, and I heard his footsteps stomping up the stairs. I sank into a chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table, whispering a prayer under my breath. That evening, Carol Jenkins stopped by with a basket of tomatoes from her garden. She took one look at me and frowned. "Linda, you look pale. Has Ryan been giving you trouble again?" I forced a smile, though my hands still shook. "He's just restless, Carol. He'll be fine." She set the basket on the counter and placed a hand on my arm. "You can't keep covering for him. I've seen the way he talks to you. That boy's temper is dangerous. You need to think about yourself, Linda." "Ow." I sighed, my eyes falling to the floor. "He's all I have left, Carol. If I give up on him, what's left of my life?" Carol's expression softened, but her eyes held a firmness that I could not ignore. "Sometimes, loving someone means making the hardest choice. You don't deserve to live in fear, Linda." Her words echoed in my mind long after she left. That night, as I sat alone at the kitchen table, I heard Ryan pacing upstairs. His footsteps went back and forth, and every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself he was just upset, that he would calm down. But when the footsteps stopped suddenly, and the house grew silent, the air grew heavy with dread. Moments later, Ryan came back downstairs. His eyes were darker now, and his hand gripped the handle of a kitchen knife. My breath caught in my throat. "Ma," he said in a low voice, almost a growl, "if you won't give me money, then maybe I'll just take what I need." I froze, my body stiff as a board. The sight of my own son standing there with a knife in his hand was something I never thought I'd live to see. My heart broke even as fear surged through me. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Put that down. Please, son. This isn't you." But it was him. Or rather, it was the man the bottle had turned him into. His hand trembled, not from hesitation, but from the desperation of his addiction. I rose slowly from the chair, my legs unsteady. "You don't need to do this," I said gently. You are better than this. I know you are. His eyes darted to my purse on the counter. Then prove it, he snapped. Give me the money. Something inside me shifted then. Perhaps it was the years of bending, of giving in, of sacrificing until I had nothing left. Perhaps it was the echo of Carol's voice reminding me I didn't deserve to live in fear. Whatever it was, I found myself standing taller than I thought I could. No, I said firmly. The word hung in the air like a stone dropping into a still pond. His face contorted with rage, and for a moment I thought he might lunge at me. My hands shook, but I did not move. You don't mean that, he said, his voice rising. You're my mother. You're supposed to take care of me. And end. I have taken care of you, I said, tears filling my eyes. All my life, I have taken care of you. But this is not care. This is destruction, and I can't do it anymore. For a long moment, we stared at each other. The knife glinted under the kitchen light. My heart pounded, but my feet stayed planted. I don't know where the strength came from, perhaps from the same place that gave me the courage to raise him alone after his father died. Perhaps from the deep well of love that still lived inside me, even now. Finally, Ryan's arm dropped slightly. His face crumpled, torn between anger and something like shame. He turned abruptly and stormed back upstairs, the knife still in his hand. The slam of his bedroom door rattled the walls. I collapsed into the chair, my body trembling from head to toe. Tears poured down my cheeks as I whispered to the empty room. God, help me. I don't know how much more I can take. End of prom. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the house made me flinch. I thought of calling Officer Reynolds, the town's police chief, but my heart clenched at the thought of Ryan being taken away in handcuffs. He was still my son, even after everything. I prayed for a sign, some kind of guidance. When morning came, I saw Carol watering her flowers across the street. She looked up and caught my eye, and I knew she could see the fear written all over my face. She waved me over, and for a moment, I considered walking across the street to tell her everything. But instead, I just lifted my hand weakly and went back inside. Because the truth was, I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I also knew something had to change, and soon. The morning after that terrible night, I moved through the house like a ghost. My body was heavy, my spirit drained. I made myself a cup of coffee, though my hands shook so much that half of it spilled onto the counter. I cleaned it up slowly, as if I had all the time in the world. But inside my chest, my heart was still racing from the memory of Ryan holding that knife. When he finally came downstairs, he didn't look at me. His hair was a mess, and he smelled of stale liquor. He went straight to the refrigerator, pulled out a soda, and slammed the door shut. For a brief second, our eyes met. I searched for the boy I once knew, but all I saw was a wall of anger and shame. Without a word, he walked back upstairs, leaving me alone in the silence. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, my hands wrapped around the coffee cup. I knew this could not go on. I could not live in fear of my own son, but the thought of calling the police filled me with dread. I imagined Ryan being dragged away in handcuffs, his head bowed in shame as the neighbors watched. The image was unbearable. Later that morning, there was a knock at the door. It was Carol Jenkins, standing on the porch with her usual worried expression. She didn't wait for an invitation. She just stepped inside, set her purse on the counter, and gave me that look that always made me feel like a child being scolded. "Linda," she said firmly, "this has gone too far. I heard shouting last night. Don't tell me nothing happened." I lowered my eyes, my lips trembling. He had a knife, Carol. He was angry because I wouldn't give him money. And oofing. Carol gasped and grabbed my hand. "Dear Lord, Linda, you can't keep this a secret anymore. He could hurt you. Next time, it might be worse." Tears welled in my eyes. "He's my son, Carol. What kind of mother calls the police on her own child?" "The kind of mother who wants to live to see tomorrow," Carol shot back. Her voice softened then. "You've done everything you can, Linda, but this is bigger than you now. You need help." Her words sank into me like stones. I knew she was right, but my heart resisted. I promised her I would think about it, though we both knew that thinking wasn't enough. That afternoon, as I was folding laundry, there was another knock at the door. This time it was a uniform. Officer Mark Reynolds stood tall on my porch, his hat tucked under his arm. He had been the sheriff of Cedarville for as long as I could remember, a man of steady presence and calm authority. "Afternoon, Linda," he said, his deep voice carrying both kindness and seriousness. "Carol stopped by the station. She was worried about you. Mind if I come in?" My heart sank, but I stepped aside and let him enter. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken truths. "Linda," he began, "I've known you a long time. I know how much you love that boy of yours, but I also know what alcohol can do to a man, and I can't ignore it if you're in danger." I twisted my hands in my lap. "He didn't hurt me, Mark. He was angry, yes, but he's still my son. He's not a criminal." Mark leaned forward, his eyes steady on mine. "I don't want to treat him like a criminal, but I also don't want to get a call one night saying something happened to you. There are programs, Linda. Rehab, counseling. But none of that can happen unless you take the first step." His words cut through me. Programs. Rehab. I had thought of those things before, but Ryan had always refused. He said he didn't need help, that he could quit whenever he wanted. But the truth was plain. He couldn't. "I'll think about it," I whispered. Mark sighed and stood. "I'll check in on you again, Linda. And if you ever feel unsafe, even for a moment, you call me. Promise me that." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. That evening, when Ryan left the house probably to find another bottle, I sat alone on the porch, the cool autumn air wrapping around me. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I felt both small and heavy, as if the weight of my life was pressing me into the wooden chair. Then I saw a figure walking down the street. At first, I thought it was one of the neighbors, but as he got closer, recognition stirred in me. It was Alex Cooper, Ryan's old friend from high school. I hadn't seen him in years. He used to be wild, always getting into trouble with Ryan, but now he looked different, steadier somehow. "Mrs. Harris?" he called, giving me a warm smile. "It's been a long time." "Alex?" I said, standing up in surprise. "Goodness, I hardly recognized you." He laughed softly. "I get that a lot. I've been away, working construction out in Tennessee, but I just moved back to town. Thought I'd come by and say hello." We sat on the porch, and I asked about his life. To my surprise, he told me he had struggled with drinking too, but a few years ago he hit rock bottom and decided to change. With the help of a rehab program and some good people, he turned his life around. Now he was working steadily, and even mentoring others who were trying to get sober. As he spoke, my heart ached with both hope and sorrow. If Alex could change, maybe Ryan could too. But would he ever find the strength to admit he needed help? "Mrs. Harris," Alex said gently, as if he could read my thoughts. "I know Ryan's been struggling. I used to be right where he island. If he ever wants to talk, I'd be there for him. No judgment." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you, Alex. I don't know if he'll listen, but knowing you're here, it means more than you know." That night, after Alex left, I sat in the quiet house and thought about what he had said. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Ryan wasn't completely lost. Maybe there was still a way back. But deep down, I also knew that the path ahead would be dark and dangerous, and that I might have to face even more fear before we ever saw the light. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope, each step uncertain and dangerous. After Alex's visit, a small ember of hope flickered inside me, but Ryan's behavior grew darker. It was as if he sensed my hesitation, as if my refusal to hand him money had planted a seed of resentment that now blossomed into anger. Some mornings, he wouldn't come out of his room until noon, his eyes bloodshot, his voice hoarse from drinking the night before. Other times, he disappeared for hours, only to stumble back through the door with the smell of whiskey clinging to his clothes. Each time I heard the door creak open, my stomach tightened, wondering which version of my son would walk in the quiet, sullen man who barely spoke, or the raging storm that left me trembling in my own home. One evening, as I was preparing supper, Ryan came into the kitchen and dropped heavily into a chair. "You talked to Reynolds, didn't you?" he said suddenly. The knife in my hand froze mid-chop. "What makes you think that?" "I saw his car outside last week. Carol must have run her mouth, and now you've got the sheriff sniffing around. You trying to get me locked up, Ma? His words cut through me sharper than any blade. No, Ryan, nobody's trying to lock you up. He was just checking in. People are worried about you. I'm worried about you. His eyes narrowed. Worried or ashamed? Do you walk around town telling people your son's a drunk? That he can't get his life together? Tears stung my eyes. I've never said a word like that. You're my son, Ryan. All I want is to see you safe, to see you live a life worth living. He scoffed, pushing back his chair so hard it scraped the floor. Well, maybe this is the only life I get. Then he stormed out, leaving the door wide open behind him. I stood there, clutching the counter for support, my whole body shaking. It was moments like that when I wondered if the boy who once chased fireflies was gone forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker across the empty road. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and the rustle of autumn leaves carried through the night air. My heart ached with loneliness. The next afternoon, Alex came by again. He leaned against the porch railing, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. I ran into Ryan at the store, he said carefully. He didn't look so good. I sighed, my shoulders sagging. He's angry all the time. I don't know what to do anymore. Alex nodded slowly. I know that anger. When I was in it, I pushed away everyone who tried to help me. But deep down, I wanted someone to keep showing up, even when I said I didn't. And I studied his face, the calm strength in his eyes. Do you really think he can change? I do, Alex said without hesitation. But it's going to be messy. And it's not something you can fix by yourself, Mrs. Harris. He needs to want it. But he also needs people around him who believe he's worth saving. His words gave me both comfort and fear. Because believing in Ryan meant opening myself to more pain, more danger. Yet how could I stop believing? He was my son. Later that week, Ryan came home later than usual, stumbling into the house with a fresh cut above his eyebrow. My heart dropped. What happened? I asked, rushing to him. Nothing, he muttered, brushing me off. Ryan, you're bleeding. Please, let me help. But he shoved past me, slamming his bedroom door. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. I leaned against the wall, tears sliding down my cheeks. That weekend, Carol invited me over for tea. I sat at her kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a warm mug, while she studied me with those sharp eyes of hers. You can't go on like this, Linda, she said quietly. You're wearing yourself down to nothing. That boy, he's going to destroy you if you let him. I know, I whispered, my throat tight. But how do I stop? He's my child. If I turn my back, who else does he have? Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Sometimes, love means letting go before it pulls you under. You've given him everything. Don't let him take the last piece of you too. Her words lingered in my heart, but even as I nodded, I knew I wasn't ready to let go. The following evening brought another storm. Ryan burst into the kitchen, demanding money again. I told him I didn't have any to give, and his face twisted with fury. You think you can control me? He shouted. You think because you're old and weak, I'll just sit here and take it? I'm not a kid anymore, Ma. End. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the counter. I'm not trying to control you, Ryan. I'm trying to save you. Can't you see that? But he was past reason. His voice grew louder, his fists pounding the table. I felt the walls closing in, the fear tightening around my chest. In that moment, I realized I was standing at the edge of something dangerous, something that could not be ignored any longer. When he finally stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled, I sank to the floor and sobbed. My body shook with the weight of it all. The house felt too big, too empty, too unsafe. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone. My fingers hovered over the buttons, tempted to call Officer Reynolds. But every time I imagined Ryan being dragged away, my hand froze. I prayed instead, whispering words into the darkness, begging God for strength, for guidance, for some sign that I wasn't alone. And then I remembered Alex's words. Even when I said I didn't want help, I wanted someone to keep showing up. It was a fragile thread, but it was all I had left to hold on to. A week after the night Ryan slammed the door so hard it rattled the windows, I found myself sitting in the church pew on a quiet Sunday morning, my hands folded tightly in my lap. The sermon blurred past me. I couldn't focus on the words. All I heard was the echo of Ryan's shouting. All I saw was the knife glinting in his hand. When the service ended, people filed out, chatting and greeting one another, but I lingered behind. The church had always been a place of comfort for me, yet lately even God felt distant. I prayed, but the silence afterward felt heavier than any answer. As I stood to leave, I saw Officer Mark Reynolds waiting outside. He tipped his hat politely. "Morning, Linda. Mind if I walk you home?" I hesitated, my heart tightening, but I nodded. The autumn wind rustled through the trees as we walked down Maple Street together. "I won't dance around it," Mark said after a moment. "We've had a few complaints lately. People have seen Ryan drunk and stumbling around downtown. One of the store owners said he caused a scene last night." Shame burned in my cheeks. "He's not a bad person, Mark. He's just lost." Mark sighed, his boots crunching on the gravel. "I know he's not a bad person. I've known that boy since he was little. But Linda, he's getting reckless. I can't ignore it if he puts himself or others in danger. If something happens, my hands will be tied." My throat tightened. "Please, Mark, he just needs time. He can change. I know he can." He stopped walking and looked at me with steady eyes. "Do you, Linda? Do you really believe that? Because if you do, then you've got to act before it's too late. Waiting won't save him." His words echoed in my chest long after he left me at my front porch. That evening, Ryan stumbled into the house smelling of whiskey. His shirt was wrinkled and his speech slurred. "You been talking to Reynolds?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing. My breath caught. "He stopped me after church. He's worried about you, Ryan. We all are." His face twisted in rage. "Worried? No, he wants me locked up. And you're feeding him stories. You'd rather see me in a cell than in this house." "That's not true," I pleaded. "I just want you safe." He leaned in close, his breath hot with alcohol. "Safe? You think you can control me with your prayers and your pity? You don't own me, Ma. Nobody does." Fear gripped me so tightly that I had to brace myself against the counter. "Ryan, please." But he shoved past me, storming upstairs, the door slamming so hard it rattled the walls again. The next morning, I found Carol waiting on my porch with a basket of muffins. She didn't even try to hide her concern. I heard shouting again. "Linda, this has to stop. You can't let him keep terrorizing you." I sank into a chair, my eyes hollow. "He's angry with Reynolds now. He thinks I betrayed him." Carol shook her head firmly. "That boy is heading straight for disaster. If you won't protect yourself, then Reynolds will have no choice but to step in." Her words filled me with dread. The thought of Ryan behind bars twisted my stomach, but so did the thought of another night like the last. Later that week, Alex stopped by again. His presence was like a breath of fresh air in a stifling house. He sat on the porch with me, his voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Harris, I know Ryan's angry. I know he doesn't want to hear it. But I've been there. I've been exactly where he islanded. The only reason I got out was because someone refused to give up on me. If you let Reynolds handle this alone, Ryan will end up in jail or worse. But if we can reach him before that, maybe there's still hope." His words stirred something inside me. Hope, fragile but persistent, but fear still clung to me. "He won't listen to me anymore, Alex. Maybe he'll listen to you." "I'll try," Alex said, "but he needs to see you stand firm too. If he thinks he can scare you into giving him what he wants, nothing will change." That night, Ryan came home earlier than usual, though his eyes were glazed and his words sharp. He dropped into a chair at the kitchen table. "Ma, I need money. Just this once. Don't start preaching, just give it to me." I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. "No, Ryan, I can't keep doing this. It's killing you, and it's killing me." His fist slammed the table, rattling the dishes. "Don't you dare say no to me," he roared. My heart thundered, but I stayed seated, clutching the edge of the chair. "I love you, Ryan, but I won't give you another dollar for booze. Not now, not ever again." His face went red with fury. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. He stood, towering over me, his hands balled into fists. You think Reynolds will save you? You think Alex has all the answers? They can't fix me. Nobody can. The tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Then, with a sound halfway between a growl and a sob, Ryan turned and stormed out of the house. The door slammed, and his footsteps faded into the night. I sat there in the silence, my body trembling, tears streaming down my face. My son was slipping further away, and no matter how tightly I held on to hope, it felt like sand slipping through my fingers. Later that night, the phone rang. My heart jumped, fearing the worst. But it was Officer Reynolds. "Linda," he said gently. "Ryan was seen near the bar downtown again. He picked a fight. We broke it up before it got ugly, but this is a warning. If it happens again, there won't be a choice. He'll be arrested." I closed my eyes, tears burning. "Thank you, Mark. I understand." When I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the silent phone. My heart felt split in two one-half, clinging desperately to the hope that Ryan could change, the other bracing for the moment when I would lose him to the law. And in that silence, I realized that the storm was far from over. The days that followed were a blur of tension. I lived as though holding my breath, waiting for the sound of Ryan's footsteps, never knowing whether it would be the quiet shuffle of exhaustion or the pounding march of fury. Every slam of a door, every raised voice from the street sent my heart racing. I could feel the walls of the house pressing in on me. It was a Friday evening when the storm finally broke. I had just settled into the living room with a blanket and a cup of tea when the phone rang. My stomach dropped at the sound. Bad news had a way of finding me after dark. "Linda, it's Carol," came the urgent voice on the other end. "You'd better get down to Miller's grocery. Ryan's there. He's making a scene." My heart hammered. "What do you mean?" "He's drunk, Linda. Shouting at folks, knocking things over. Someone's already called Reynolds." I didn't think. I just grabbed my coat and hurried out the door. The night air was crisp, biting against my cheeks as I rushed down the street. By the time I reached the store, a small crowd had gathered outside. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a pale light on the faces of my neighbors. They were murmuring, their eyes darting toward the entrance. Inside, I could hear Ryan's voice, loud and slurred. My hands trembled as I pushed through the crowd. When I stepped into the store, the sight froze me. Ryan was standing near the checkout counter, his face red, his arms flailing as he shouted at Mr. Miller, the store owner. A stack of canned goods lay scattered on the floor where he had knocked them down. "You think you can tell me what to do?" Ryan roared. "You think you're better than me?" "Ryan, please," I whispered, stepping forward. His head snapped toward me, and for a moment, I saw the boy he once was confused, lost, hurting. But then the rage returned, and his hands swept across the counter, sending more items crashing to the floor. "Stay out of this, Ma," he shouted. The door opened behind me, and Officer Reynolds stepped inside, his expression grim. 2 deputies followed him. The room grew tense, the crowd outside pressing closer to the windows. "Ryan," Reynolds said calmly, "that's enough. Put your hands down and come outside with me." Ryan's chest heaved as he glared at the officer. "You don't tell me what to do. Nobody tells me what to do." I could see the muscles in Reynolds' jaw tighten. "Ryan, you're causing a disturbance. Don't make this worse. Let's go outside and talk." For a moment, I thought Ryan might comply. His shoulders sagged slightly, his eyes darting between Reynolds and me. But then, in a burst of anger, he grabbed a glass bottle from the shelf and hurled it against the wall. It shattered with a sharp crack, shards scattering across the floor. Gasps filled the store. Reynolds stepped forward, his hand resting on his holster. "Ryan Harris, that's enough. Put your hands behind your back." "No," Ryan screamed, backing away. "You're not locking me up, and—" I rushed forward, tears streaming down my face. "Please, Ryan, stop. Don't fight them." But it was too late. The deputies moved in, and Ryan thrashed wildly, shouting curses as they tried to restrain him. My heart shattered as I watched my son, my boy who once chased fireflies, struggling like a trapped animal in the grip of the law. "Stop," I cried, my voice breaking. "Please don't hurt him." Reynolds caught my eye, his face full of regret. "Linda, we don't want to hurt him. But we can't let this go on." Finally, With a surge of effort, the deputies pinned Ryan's arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs into place. His voice broke into a hoarse scream, filled with rage and despair. "You did this, Ma. You sold me out." The words pierced me deeper than any blade. I fell to my knees, my body shaking with sobs as they led him out of the store. The crowd parted, their whispers filling the night air. Carol appeared at my side, her arm around my shoulders as I cried. "It's for the best, Linda," she whispered. "It's the only way." But in that moment, I could not believe it. All I felt was the weight of failure crushing me. The image of my son in chains seared into my heart. At the station, Reynolds let me sit in his office while they processed Ryan. He poured me a glass of water and set it on the desk. "Linda," he said gently, "this couldn't go on. He was going to hurt someone or himself. We'll keep him overnight, maybe longer, until we can figure out the next step. This isn't the end. There are programs, ways to help him." I clutched the glass with trembling hands. "He hates me now. He thinks I betrayed him." Reynolds leaned forward. "He's angry, yes. But deep down, he knows you love him. Sometimes love doesn't look like kindness, it looks like boundaries. You've given him a chance to see the truth." His words were meant to comfort me, but my heart was still breaking. I left the station that night, with a hollow ache inside me. The image of Ryan's furious eyes burned into my mind. When I returned home, the house felt emptier than ever. I sat in the dark living room, listening to the clock tick on the wall, each second a reminder of how far we had fallen. The next day, Alex came by. He had heard what happened everyone in town had. He sat on the porch with me, his voice quiet but steady. "I know it feels like the end," he said, "but sometimes hitting the bottom is the only way a man looks up. This could be the beginning, Mrs. Harris. If he wants it, this could be where he turns around." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to that fragile hope. But as I sat there, staring at the street where Ryan once rode his bike as a boy, all I felt was the sharp sting of loss. Because loving a child, I was learning, sometimes meant losing them first. The first night Ryan spent in the county jail was the longest night of my life. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house, and imagining my son in a cold cell. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face twisted in rage, shouting that I had betrayed him. The words echoed in my chest like a wound that would not close. In the morning, I called the station. Officer Reynolds told me Ryan was being kept calm, that he had sobered up and was resting. His voice was steady, but I heard the unspoken truth. They didn't know what would happen next. "Can I see him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You can," Reynolds said, "but I'll warn you, Linda, it might not be easy. He's angry, very angry. Sometimes a little distance is what he needs." But I couldn't stay away. A mother's heart doesn't work like that. That afternoon, I walked to the station, my steps heavy with dread. The fluorescent lights inside buzzed softly, the air thick with disinfectant. A deputy led me to a small room with a glass divider. On the other side, Ryan sat, slouched in a chair, his hands cuffed in front of him. His eyes were red, his face pale. For a moment, he didn't look at me. When he finally did, his stare was hard, sharp enough to cut me in two. "Why are you here?" he spat. "Haven't you done enough?" My throat tightened. "Ryan, I didn't call them. You brought this on yourself." "Oh, don't lie to me," he shouted, the sound echoing in the small room. "You and Reynolds, you set me up. You'd rather see me rot in here than give me a few dollars." Tears filled my eyes, but I held my ground. "I would rather see you alive than dead in a ditch." "That's where you were headed, Ryan. I couldn't stand by anymore." And 49. His face twisted with pain. And for a brief second, I thought I saw the boy I once knew, the one who used to hug me after school, the one who once whispered, "I love you, Mama." But the moment passed, and the wall of anger returned. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Just leave," he muttered. "If you care about me at all, leave me alone." The deputy tapped the glass, signaling that my time was up. I pressed my palm against the divider, though Ryan didn't lift his hand. As I walked out of the station, my heart felt shattered into pieces too small to gather. That evening, Alex came by. He found me on the porch, staring at the fading sunset. Without a word, he sat beside me. For a long time, we listened to the crickets singing in the tall grass, the silence between us heavy but not unbearable. Finally, I spoke. He hates me now. He said I betrayed him. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should have just kept giving him money. Alex shook his head firmly. No, Mrs. Harris. If you had, he'd still be drinking himself into the grave. What you did, it might feel cruel, but it was the first real act of love he's had in a long time. Tears slipped down my cheeks. But what if he never forgives me? Alex looked at me with steady eyes. Then at least you'll know you tried to save him. Forgiveness comes in time, but life doesn't give second chances when addiction wins. I should know. My mother once said the same thing to me, that she'd rather have me alive and angry than dead and gone. And she was right. I turned to him, searching his face. How did you do it, Alex? How did you finally change? He leaned back, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. I hit the bottom. I lost everything. Friends, money, self-respect. I woke up one morning on the floor of a stranger's house, not even sure how I got there, and I realized I was either going to die or I was going to fight. But here's the thing, someone was still there when I decided to fight. If they hadn't been, I might not be here today. His words settled deep in my heart. For the first time in days, I felt the faintest spark of hope. The next morning, I returned to the station. This time, Officer Reynolds met me at the door. Linda, he said gently, we're going to transfer Ryan to a holding facility in the city. He'll stay there until the judge sees him. There's a chance the judge might order rehab instead of jail time, but it depends on his behavior. Rehab. The word wrapped around me like a lifeline. And if he refuses? Reynolds' eyes softened. Then the judge might not give him a choice. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a Bible open in front of me. The words blurred through my tears, but I read them anyway, clinging to every verse like a rope keeping me from falling. Love is patient, love is kind. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. I whispered those words into the quiet house, praying they could carry me through. The following Sunday, I went to church again. My voice trembled as I sang the hymns, but I sang anyway. Carol sat beside me, her hand resting gently on mine. And when the pastor spoke of faith being strongest in the darkest hours, I felt the words settle into the hollow places of my heart. After the service, Alex found me outside. I've been thinking, he said. If Ryan ends up in rehab, I want to be there. I want to visit him, talk to him, show him it's possible to come out the other side. My throat tightened. You would do that for him? I would, Alex said simply. Because someone once did it for me, and because no one should fight that battle alone. I felt the tears well up again, but this time they weren't just from sorrow. They were from something stronger, something like hope. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Ryan's story wasn't over yet. The morning of Ryan's hearing arrived with a gray sky and a drizzle that clung to the windows like a veil. I woke before dawn, my stomach twisting in knots. For hours I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the clock, waiting for the moment I had been dreading. Today, my son would stand before a judge. Carol insisted on driving me. You shouldn't go alone, she said firmly, her hand squeezing mine as I climbed into her old sedan. The drive to the county courthouse felt endless. Every mile, I thought about the boy I once carried in my arms, the boy who used to beg me for one more bedtime story. How had we come to this? When we arrived, the courthouse steps loomed tall and cold. Inside, the air smelled of paper and old wood. People bustled around lawyers with briefcases, clerks with stacks of files, families waiting nervously. I clutched my purse like a lifeline, my heart pounding. They brought Ryan in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled. My breath caught in my throat. He looked smaller somehow, hunched, his eyes tired. But when he saw me sitting in the front row, his face hardened. He wouldn't look at me again. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The proceedings began. The prosecutor spoke first, describing Ryan's actions at the grocery store, how he had caused a disturbance, thrown a bottle, resisted arrest. Each word felt like another stone laid on my chest. Then Ryan's public defender stood. Your Honor, my client struggles with alcohol dependency. While his behavior was unacceptable, It stems from a disease, not malice. We ask that instead of a lengthy jail sentence, he be considered for mandatory rehabilitation. My breath caught. Rehab. The word rang like a faint bell of hope. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Mr. Harris, stand." Ryan rose slowly, his chains clinking. "You've been given chances before," she said firmly, "and yet here you are again. Why should this court believe you'll do better this time?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably, his gaze on the floor. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, almost too softly to hear, he muttered, "I don't know." The judge's eyes narrowed. "That's not good enough." Panic surged in me. I couldn't sit silent. I stood, my voice trembling. "Your Honor, please, may I speak?" The courtroom turned toward me. The judge hesitated, then nodded. I stepped forward, my knees weak but my voice steadying as I went. "Ryan is my son. I know better than anyone the pain his choices have caused. I've been afraid in my own home. I've watched him destroy himself piece by piece. But I also know the boy he used to be, the boy who cared, who loved, who had dreams. That boy is still in there, buried under the bottle. If you put him in jail, it will bury him deeper. But if you give him a chance at rehab, if you let him see that someone still believes in him, maybe, just maybe, he can come back." My voice broke on the last word. Tears blurred my vision. The courtroom was silent, save for the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. The judge studied me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to Ryan. "Mr. Harris, your mother believes in you more than you believe in yourself. That is both a blessing and a burden. I will give you one chance mandatory rehabilitation for 90 days. Fail this, and you will serve time in jail. Do you understand?" Ryan lifted his head, his eyes glistening with something between anger and fear. "Yes, Your Honor," he said hoarsely. The gavel struck, and the decision was made. My knees nearly gave out with relief. As they led Ryan away, he glanced back at me. For the first time in weeks, our eyes met. His expression was not forgiveness, it was confusion, maybe even resentment, but it was also softer than before. It was enough to keep me standing. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The clouds parted just enough for a sliver of sunlight to break through. Carol hugged me tightly. "You did it, Linda. You gave him a chance." But I shook my head, tears spilling down my cheeks. "No, Carol. Now he has to take it. I can't walk this road for him." That evening, Alex stopped by. He listened carefully as I told him what had happened, his expression thoughtful. "Rehab can be brutal," he said. "It's not just about drying out. It's about facing every demon you've been drowning with booze. He's going to hate it. But if he sticks with it," he trailed off, then smiled faintly. "If he sticks with it, he might just find himself again." I looked at Alex, my voice trembling. "Will you really be there for him?" "I will," he said firmly. "Because I know what it's like to feel like everyone's given up, and because I believe no one is too far gone." That night, as I sat in my quiet kitchen, I let myself breathe for the first time in what felt like forever. The road ahead would be long, painful, uncertain, but for the first time, I had something I hadn't dared to hold on to in months. Hope. The day they took Ryan to the rehabilitation center, the house felt heavier than it ever had before. For years, I had prayed for peace and quiet, for nights without shouting, for mornings without the smell of whiskey in the air. And now that the silence had finally come, it pressed down on me like a weight I didn't know how to bear. I stood in the kitchen after they left, staring at the half-empty chair at the table. His coffee mug was still in the sink, his boots by the back door. The smallest things became reminders: his jacket slung over a chair, the dent in the couch cushion where he usually Saturday. My heart ached with the absence of his presence, even when his presence had so often filled me with fear. That evening, Carol came by with a casserole. She set it on the counter and looked around the quiet house. "It feels different," she said softly. "It does," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I thought I'd be relieved, and in some ways, I am. But it feels so empty, Carol, like I've lost him completely." Carol squeezed my hand. "He's not lost, Linda. He's fighting now. You've given him that chance." But as I sat at the table that night, eating alone, I wondered if Ryan saw it that way. I could still hear his words in the courthouse. You betrayed me. What if he never forgave me? What if, even after all this, the boy I loved never came back? The days passed slowly. I kept myself busy with small chores, sweeping the porch, folding laundry, tending to the flowers in the front yard. But no matter what I did, my thoughts always circled back to Ryan. What was he doing at that moment? Was he angry? Was he in pain? Was he even trying? After a week, I received a call from the center. A counselor's voice came through the line, calm and professional. Mrs. Harris, your son has begun the program. The first days are difficult, as you can imagine. He's resistant, but that's normal. What matters is that he's here, and he's safe. Safe. The word brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had lived with the fear that Ryan wouldn't make it through the night. Now, for the first time, I could sleep without wondering if he was lying somewhere drunk and helpless. Still, safety wasn't the same as healing. One Sunday after church, Alex stopped by. He leaned against the porch railing, just like he used to in high school. I spoke to one of the counselors, he told me. They said Ryan's struggling. He doesn't want to be there. But that's how it starts. I hated everyone when I first walked into rehab. Hated the counselors, hated my family, hated myself most of all. But slowly, it changes. I studied his face. Do you really think he can do it, Alex? Alex nodded firmly. I know he can, because I was worse than he island. And if I could climb out, so can he. But he'll need something to hold on to, something to remind him why it's worth fighting. I thought about that long after Alex left. What reason did Ryan have to fight? Was it me? Did he still love me enough to try? Or had the bottle buried that love too deep? 2 weeks into his stay, I received a letter. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was messy, the ink smudged in places, but it was his. Ma, I don't know why I'm writing this. They said it might help. I hate this place. I hate the rules, the questions, the way they look at me like I'm broken. But sometimes I think about you sitting alone in that house, and I wonder if maybe I belong here after all. I don't know if I can change, but I'll try. Don't give up on me. Tears blurred the words as I read them again and again. For the first time in a long while, I felt my son reaching out, not with anger, but with something fragile and real. I wrote back the same night. My letter was filled with memories of better times, of summers spent chasing fireflies, of winter mornings by the fire, of the boy who once told me he wanted to be a man who makes people proud. I told him I still believed in that boy. I told him I loved him, no matter what. The letters became our lifeline. Some days his words were sharp and angry, filled with frustration at the process. Other days they carried a softness, a glimpse of the boy I remembered. I saved every letter, folding them neatly and tucking them into a box by my bed. Meanwhile, life in Cedarville went on. Neighbors asked questions, some curious, some judgmental. I learned to hold my head high, to remind myself that this wasn't just Ryan's battle, it was mine too. One afternoon, Reynolds stopped by. He leaned on the porch railing beside me, his eyes kind but steady. How are you holding up, Linda? Some days better than others, I admitted. He nodded. That's how it goes. Just remember, you're not alone. We're all pulling for him, and for you. As the weeks turned into a month, the house began to feel less like a tomb and more like a place of waiting. I planted tulips in the front yard, started knitting again, even baked pies with Carol. The silence was still heavy, but it no longer felt suffocating. It felt like space for healing, for hope. Still, every night, I sat by the window and looked out at the street where Ryan once rode his bike, where he once chased fireflies. I whispered a prayer into the darkness, the same words, over and over. Bring him back to me, Lord. Bring my son back. And for the first time in years, I believed it might be possible. By the time the second month of Ryan's program began, the tone of his letters had shifted. At first, they were full of bitterness and resentment, every word dripping with anger. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something changed. His sentences grew longer, more thoughtful. The anger softened, replaced by glimpses of reflection. Ma, today they made us sit in a circle and talk about the worst things we've done. I didn't want to share, but when it was my turn, I talked about the night at Miller's grocery. I could see the fear in the clerk's face all over again. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just hurting myself, I was scaring everyone around me. I don't know what to do with that guilt, but at least I finally see it. Reading those words, I felt something inside me loosen. It was as if the thick fog that had covered my son's heart was beginning to lift. A week later, the phone rang. It was one of the counselors from the Rehab Center. "Mrs. Harris, we'd like to invite you to a family session next week. Ryan has reached a point in his program where it would be valuable for him to sit down with you. It will give both of you a chance to talk openly, with support." My stomach fluttered with nerves. "Will he? Does he want me to come?" "Yes," the counselor said gently. "He does." For days, I could think of nothing else. I replayed our last encounter at the jail, the anger in his eyes, the way he said I betrayed him. What would it be like to sit across from him again? Would he still hate me, or would I finally see my son again? When the day came, Alex offered to drive me. On the way, he told me what to expect. "He'll probably be defensive at first," he warned. "But don't let that scare you. The fact that he agreed to the session at all, that's huge." The rehab center was a plain, brick building on the edge of the city, surrounded by tall fences and neatly trimmed grass. Inside, the halls smelled faintly of disinfectant, but the walls were decorated with posters about hope, recovery, and resilience. A counselor led me into a small room with a circle of chairs. Ryan was already there, sitting stiffly with his arms crossed. His face was thinner, his eyes clearer than I remembered, though they still carried shadows. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, the counselor encouraged us to begin. "Ryan," she said gently, "this is your chance to tell your mother what you've been holding inside." Ryan's jaw tightened. He looked at me, then away. "You left me," he muttered. My heart squeezed. "I never left you, Ryan. And you let them take me away," he snapped. "You stood there and watched while they put cuffs on me. How is that not leaving me?" Tears stung my eyes, but I forced myself to stay steady. "Because if I hadn't let them take you, you might not be alive right now. Do you understand that? Every night, I prayed you'd come home safe. And every night, I wondered if it would be the night I lost you. I let them take you because I wanted to keep you." His face twisted with pain. He rubbed his hands together, restless. "I hated you for it. I still don't know if I can forgive you." The words pierced me, but I nodded. "I know, and I'll carry that if I have to. But I'd rather have you alive and hating me than buried in the ground." Silence filled the room. Ryan's eyes darted toward me, then dropped to the floor. For the first time, I saw tears forming in his eyes. "I don't know how to be better," he whispered. "I don't even know if I can." End quote. I leaned forward, my voice trembling. "You don't have to know right now. You just have to keep trying. That's all I ask, Ryan, one step at a time. I'll walk with you, even if you stumble. But I can't do it for you. You have to want it." For a long time, he didn't answer. Then he nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping. "I'll try, Ma. That's all I can promise." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. After the session, the counselor walked me to the lobby. "You did well," she said. "These conversations are never easy, but the fact that he opened up, even a little, that's progress." On the ride home, I stared out the window, the city lights blurring past. My heart felt heavy and light all at once, heavy with the pain of what we had endured, but light with the possibility of something new. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Ryan's latest letter beside me. His words echoed in my mind. "I don't know if I can change, but I'll try." For the first time, I believed him. After the family session, I carried Ryan's words with me everywhere. "I'll try, Ma. That's all I can promise." It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had in years. I replayed that moment over and over, the way his shoulders sagged when he finally admitted his fear, the way his voice cracked. It gave me something to hold on to. But recovery, I quickly learned, is not a straight path. Some days, Ryan's letters were filled with hope. He wrote about the group sessions, about learning to recognize his triggers, about small victories, like making it through a day without cravings clawing at his throat. Other days, his words were dark, angry. "Ma, today I almost walked out. I hate the rules. I hate the counselors. I hate feeling like I'm nothing but a screw-up. I don't know if I can do this. I wanted to quit so badly, but then I thought about you, about how you looked at me in that room. I stayed because of that. Don't know if I'll stay tomorrow." Every time one of those darker letters arrived, my chest tightened. But I forced myself to keep writing back, to remind him of the boy he had been, to tell him that stumbling didn't mean failing. Meanwhile, I realized I was facing my own kind of recovery. For so long, my life had been consumed by Ryan's drinking, his moods, his demands, his anger. Now that he was gone, I had to relearn how to live for myself. Carol was the first to notice. One afternoon, she found me sitting on the porch, staring at the empty street. "You're still waiting," she said gently. "I don't know what else to do," I admitted. Carol set down the basket of muffins she'd brought. "Linda, you've carried Ryan for years. You've bent and broken yourself trying to keep him afloat. Maybe now it's time to carry yourself for once." Her words struck me. That evening, I pulled out my sewing machine, dusty from years of neglect. The whir of the needle felt strange at first, but soon the rhythm returned, steady and calming. I mended old clothes, then started stitching new ones. For the first time in years, I was doing something that was mine, not just his. Alex noticed the change too. He stopped by one evening with a stack of pamphlets. "These are for family support groups," he explained. "For people like you, parents, spouses, kids. It helps to talk to others who understand." At first, I resisted. "I don't need a group. I just need Ryan to get better." But Alex shook his head. "You need healing too, Mrs. Harris. You've been through hell. You can't pretend it hasn't scarred you." That Sunday, I decided to try. The meeting was in the basement of a church in the next town over. When I walked in, I saw a circle of chairs, people with tired eyes but open faces. One by one, they shared their stories: sons and daughters lost to addiction, spouses struggling to stay sober, parents who had buried their children. When it was my turn, my voice trembled. "My son's in rehab. For years I lived in fear of him, fear of his anger, fear of losing him. Now he's gone, and the house is quiet, but my heart still aches." The room was silent, and then someone across the circle nodded. "We understand," she said simply. I left that meeting lighter than when I entered. For the first time, I didn't feel completely alone. Back at the rehab center, Ryan continued to wrestle with himself. The counselor called one day to update me. "He's making progress," she said. "But he's stubborn. He struggles to trust. Still, he's staying, and that's a victory." In his next letter, Ryan wrote, "Ma, they asked us today to write down the name of one person we wanted to make amends to. I wrote your name. I don't know how I'll ever make it right, but I want to try. That scares me more than anything, the idea of facing you and owning up to what I've done. But I guess that's the point." I pressed the paper to my chest and wept. For years, I had prayed for even a flicker of remorse, a hint that he still loved me. And now, here it was, scrawled in his messy handwriting. But I knew better than to expect miracles overnight. There would be setbacks, temptations, relapses. I had heard enough stories at the support group to know that recovery is a lifelong battle. One evening, as the sun set over Cedarville, I sat on the porch with Alex. We watched the fireflies begin to glow in the yard, just like they had when Ryan was a boy. "Do you think he'll make it?" I asked softly. Alex leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. "I think he has a chance, and sometimes that's all a man needs. A chance and someone who believes in him." I nodded, my throat tight. I'll never stop believing, but I'm learning I have to believe in myself too. For the first time in a long while, I felt something like balance. I was still a mother, still waiting, still hoping, but I was also Linda, a woman who could sew, who could laugh with a neighbor, who could sit on her porch and watch the fireflies without drowning in fear. And maybe that was the beginning of my own healing. When the letter arrived inviting me to the family day at the rehab center, I sat at the kitchen table holding it for a long time. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, reading the words over and over. Ryan wanted me there. The counselors believed he was ready to let me see the progress he had made. For weeks, I had read his letters, each one a fragile thread of hope, but paper can only say so much. To look into his eyes, to hear his voice without the slur of alcohol, that was something I had almost forgotten. On the morning of family day, I dressed carefully, smoothing down the wrinkles in my blouse. Carol insisted on driving me. "You'll be too nervous to drive," she said, handing me a thermos of coffee for the road. She was right, my stomach was in knots the whole way. The rehab center looked less intimidating this time. The autumn sun glowed on the brick walls, and the air smelled faintly of leaves and cut grass. Inside, the staff greeted families with warm smiles, guiding us into a large room set up with rows of chairs. When Ryan walked in, my breath caught. He looked different. His hair was neatly trimmed, his face clearer, his posture straighter. He wasn't the boy I remembered, but he wasn't the broken man I had watched stumble through our door either. He was something in between, something rebuilding itself. Our eyes met across the room, and for the first time in years, he didn't look away. The program began with introductions from the counselors. They spoke about the importance of support, about how recovery was a road best walked together. Then came the family sessions. Each person was paired with their loved one, given space to talk openly. Ryan and I sat facing each other, knees almost touching. For a moment, silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Then he cleared his throat. "Ma," he began softly, "I don't know how to say this. I've spent so many years blaming you, hating you, pushing you away. But the truth is, you were the only one who never left." Tears welled in my eyes. "I never could, Ryan. You're my son." "Aberdee." He swallowed hard. "I hurt you. I scared you. I made our home a place you couldn't feel safe. I remember the knife, the shouting, the way you looked at me like I was a stranger. I think about that every night, and I hate myself for it." My chest ached with both sorrow and relief. Hearing him name those moments, hearing him admit what I had carried alone for so long, it was like a wound finally being acknowledged. "I forgive you," I whispered. "Not because it didn't hurt, but because I don't want to carry that pain anymore, and because I believe you're more than your worst mistakes." His eyes glistened. "I don't know if I can ever make it right." "You don't have to make it right all at once," I said gently. "You just have to keep moving forward." For a long moment, we simply sat there, tears sliding down both our cheeks. His hands, once clenched with anger, now rested open on his knees. I reached out, and he let me take one. Later, during a group activity, families and residents stood in a circle. Each person had to say one word they wanted to carry into the future. Some said, strength. Others said, patience. When it was Ryan's turn, he hesitated, then said, hope. When it was my turn, I said, faith. Afterward, we ate lunch together in the cafeteria. Ryan spoke more than I expected, telling me about the daily routines, the chores, the counseling sessions. He admitted it wasn't easy some days. He still wanted to give up, but he was learning tools to cope. "I even started running," he said with a small smile. "I never thought I'd be the type, but it helps clear my head." I laughed softly, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in a long time. "I remember when you used to race the neighbor kids down the block. You always had that competitive streak." His smile widened, and for a brief moment, I saw the boy who once chased fireflies across our yard. As the day wound down, families began to leave. Ryan walked me to the door. "Thank you for coming, Ma. I was scared you wouldn't." "I'll always come," I said, hugging him tightly. "As long as you keep trying, I'll be here." On the drive home, the sky turned shades of pink and gold. Carol glanced at me, a smile tugging at her lips. "He looked different, didn't he?" "He did," I said softly. "For the first time in years, I think I saw my son again." "Oh." That night, I sat on the porch, with the crickets singing in the grass, my heart lighter than it had been in a long time. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, I believed it was a road worth walking. As Ryan's 90 days in the program neared their end, I found myself counting the weeks, then the days, with a mixture of anticipation and fear. Each letter he sent home carried more light than the last. He wrote about running laps in the courtyard, about late-night talks with his roommate, about the books he was reading in the small library. He even joked once or twice, little glimpses of humor I hadn't seen in years. "Ma, today I helped a new guy unpack his things. He was shaking so badly I thought he might fall over. I remembered how I felt that first night, how much I wanted to run. I told him he wasn't alone. I don't know if he believed me, but I think saying it out loud helped me believe it myself. Those words made my chest ache in the best way. My son, the boy who once brought me fireflies, was starting to bring light to others. And yet, beneath my pride, fear still lived. I'd heard enough stories at the support group to know the truth. Leaving rehab was often the hardest part. The world outside was filled with temptations, with old friends and old habits waiting like wolves in the shadows. One afternoon, Officer Reynolds stopped by. He leaned against the porch railing, his hat in his hands. "Linda," he said gently, "I'm glad to hear Ryan's doing well, but I want you to be prepared. When he comes home, it won't be easy. He's going to be tested, and so will you." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know. I'm so afraid of losing him again." Reynolds' eyes softened. "Then hold on to hope, but keep your eyes open. Love him, but don't blind yourself. He has to choose this life every single day." That night, I sat with Ryan's letters spread out across the kitchen table. Some were full of anger, others full of hope. Together, they told the story of a man wrestling with himself. I prayed over them, asking God to give him strength for the battles still ahead. The next week, I attended another support group meeting. A woman there spoke about her son, who had completed rehab only to relapse a month later. Her voice cracked as she described the heartbreak of watching him spiral again. I left that meeting with tears in my eyes, fear gripping my chest. When I got home, Alex was waiting on the porch. He had a way of showing up when I needed him most. "You're scared," he said simply. "Yes," I admitted. "He's doing so well, but what if it all falls apart? What if I open that door to him again, and I'm right back where I started?" Alex nodded. "That fear never really goes away. My mom still worries about me, even now. But here's what I've learned. Relapse doesn't erase recovery. It doesn't mean he's failed. It just means he's still fighting. And as long as he keeps fighting, there's hope." His words settled into me like a balm. Still, the fear lingered. When Family Day rolled around again near the end of the program, I returned to the center. This time, Ryan greeted me with a smile, small, hesitant, but real. His eyes were clearer, his voice steadier. "I'm nervous about leaving," he admitted as we sat together in the courtyard. "It's safe here, out there. Everything's waiting for me. The bars, the liquor stores, the people I used to drink with. What if I'm not strong enough?" My heart clenched. "Then you take it one day at a time, Ryan. And when one day feels too hard, you take it 1 hour at a time. You're not alone anymore. You have people who want to see you win." He nodded, his gaze distant. "Alex came last week. He told me his story. I didn't realize how bad it got for him, but if he can do it..." He trailed off, then looked at me. "Maybe I can too." Hope flickered in my chest. But even as I smiled, I knew the hardest part was yet to come. On the night before his release, I barely slept. I paced the living room, tidied the house, set out clean sheets on his bed. The quiet felt fragile, like glass that could shatter with one wrong move. In the morning, I drove to the center to bring him home. The staff handed me a folder of instructions, meetings to attend, steps to follow, numbers to call in case of crisis. "He's made progress," the counselor said. "But remember, this is only the beginning. The real work starts now." As Ryan walked out of the building, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, my heart swelled. He looked stronger, steadier. But I also saw the fear in his eyes, the weight of the world pressing down on him. On the drive home, we sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Ma, thank you. For not giving up. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll try. That's all I can promise." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "That's all I need, Ryan. Just keep trying." As we pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always had, the white paint peeling, the porch sagging, the flowers wilting slightly in the autumn Sunday. But it felt different now. It felt like a place where something new could begin. Still, in the quiet of my heart, I knew this was not the end of the story. It was only the start of the hardest chapter yet. The first week Ryan was home felt almost like a dream. The house, which had been so quiet and heavy, suddenly had life again. He helped me fix the squeaky back door, mowed the lawn, and even sat with me on the porch in the evenings. We didn't talk much about the past. Instead, We spoke about small things, the weather, the neighbors, the way the fireflies had returned earlier than usual this year. For a while, I let myself believe we had turned a corner. But recovery is never simple. One evening, Ryan came into the kitchen looking restless. He paced back and forth, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "What is it, son?" I asked. He shook his head. "Just thinking. It's hard, Ma. Everywhere I look, I see reminders. The store down the street, the bar on Main. Even the guys I used to hang out with, they're still around." I swallowed hard. "Have you been in touch with them?" "No," he said quickly. "But I ran into one at the gas station. He said they're getting together this weekend. I told him no, but it's like the old life is calling me." Fear stabbed through me, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "Ryan, you're stronger than that now, and you don't have to face it alone. Remember what they told you at the center meetings, routines, calling your sponsor." He nodded, but his eyes were troubled. That night, I hardly slept. I heard him pacing in his room, and every creak of the floorboard sent my heart racing. The following Friday, I came home from the grocery store to find the house empty. Ryan's jacket was gone, his boots missing from the porch. My hands shook as I set down the bags. He hadn't said anything about going out. Minutes turned into hours. I tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic clawed at my chest. All the old fears returned, visions of him stumbling drunk, getting into fights, being dragged away in handcuffs. Finally, near midnight, I heard the crunch of gravel outside. The door creaked open, and Ryan stepped inside. His eyes were glassy, his movements unsteady. My heart shattered. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice breaking. "No, not again. I'm in." He swayed in the doorway, his face twisted with shame and anger. "I just needed one drink. Just one. You don't understand, Ma. It's like the craving eats me alive." Tears streamed down my face. "One drink leads to another. You know that." He slammed his fist against the wall. "I can't do this. I thought I was stronger, but I'm not. I'm just a failure." I stepped toward him, my body trembling. "No, Ryan, you're not a failure. You stumbled, that's all. But you can stand again. Please, don't give up now." For a moment, he looked at me with wild, desperate eyes. "Why do you still believe in me? After everything I've done, why?" My voice shook, but I spoke with all the strength I had left. "Because I'm your mother. Because I know there's more to you than this disease. Because I'd rather fight beside you 1,000 times than bury you once." The room fell silent, except for our ragged breathing. His shoulders sagged, and he sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, I saw not just my son battling addiction, but a man exhausted from carrying the weight of his own shame. The next morning, Ryan was quiet. He sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, his eyes red. "I messed up," he admitted softly. "But I don't want to go back there. I'll call Alex today. I'll go to a meeting. I can't do this alone." Relief washed over me, though fear still lingered. One slip could have ended everything, but instead, he was choosing to keep fighting. Later that week, Alex came by. He sat with Ryan on the porch, speaking in low, steady tones. I watched from the window as my son nodded, his shoulders relaxing slightly. For the first time since his relapse, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. This battle would never truly be over. There would always be temptations, always the risk of falling. But there would also be chances to rise again. And as long as Ryan kept choosing to stand, I would stand with him. The next Sunday at church, I lit a candle for him. My prayer was simple: give him strength for today and hope for tomorrow. When I returned home, Ryan was waiting on the porch. He looked tired, but calmer, his hands folded in his lap. "I went to the meeting," he said quietly. "It helped. I'm not fixed, Ma. I'll never be fixed. But I'm learning that I don't have to be. I just have to keep choosing." I sat beside him, tears welling in my eyes. "That's all I ask, Ryan. Just keep choosing." The autumn wind rustled the trees, scattering golden leaves across the yard. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace, not because the battle was won, but because we were still fighting together. It has been many months since the night I found Ryan standing in the doorway, shame written all over his face after his relapse. I still remember the fear that gripped me, the sinking in my chest as I thought, this is it. I've lost him again. But that moment didn't end our story. Instead, it became another chapter in a journey I now know will never be finished, only continued one day at a time. Ryan is still here. He goes to his meetings. He calls Alex when the cravings get bad, and he works small jobs around town to keep busy. He still struggles. Oh, how he struggles. There are days when the weight of it shows in his eyes, when I can see the battle raging inside him. But there are also days when I see him smile, real and unforced, the kind of smile I thought was gone forever. Those are the days that keep me going. I've learned something important along the way. Healing is not a straight road. It is crooked, filled with detours and stumbles. But stumbling doesn't mean failing. It means you are still walking. People sometimes ask me how I do it, how I keep standing beside him after all the pain, the fear, the nights I thought I wouldn't survive. And the truth is simple, though not easy. I do it because I'm his mother. Love doesn't vanish when it is tested. It deepens, even when it hurts. I have discovered a strength I didn't know I had, a strength born not from perfection but from persistence. I also learned that I, too, needed healing. For so long, my life was wrapped up in Ryan's choices, his chaos. I lost myself in the storm. But slowly, through the support group, through Carol's gentle wisdom, through Alex's encouragement, I found pieces of myself again. I learned to sit on the porch without fear, to sew dresses without guilt, to pray not only for Ryan's healing but for my own. If there is one lesson I carry from all of this, it is that love is both fragile and unbreakable. Fragile in the way it can be wounded, tested, stretched to its limits. Unbreakable in the way it endures, even when every reason says it shouldn't. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I can't promise Ryan will never stumble again. Neither can he. But what I do know is this. Today, he is alive. Today, he is trying. And today, I still get to call him my son. That is enough. To anyone listening, anyone who has a child, a spouse, or a loved one lost in addiction, I want to tell you this: you are not alone. The road is long, the nights are dark, and the weight is heavy. But there is always hope, even in the smallest steps. Don't measure success by perfection. Measure it by persistence, by the courage to keep going even when it hurts. I sit here now on my porch in Cedarville, the autumn leaves swirling around me, and I think back to the boy who once chased fireflies across this very yard. I still believe that boy lives inside the man who fights each day to stay sober, and I believe that as long as he keeps reaching for the light, I will keep holding the lantern to guide him home. That is the story of my son and me. It is not finished, and perhaps it never will be, but it is ours. And in its mess, its pain, and its hope, I have found something worth sharing. So I'll leave you with this. Never give up on the ones you love, but don't forget to love yourself along the way. Hope can be fragile, but it is also fierce. Sometimes, it's the only thing that carries us through. What did you feel while listening to this story all the way through? If it touched your heart, leave the number 1 the comments. If you didn't feel connected to it, feel free to write 0. Every piece of feedback means a lot to me, because it's thanks to you that I can keep going. It's from your responses that I draw the energy to tell the next chapter. A new story is coming, even deeper, even more moving, and I truly hope you'll be there to listen with me.